Welcome to Crisis in Perception, where we examine the systems shaping our world, one book at a time.
All right, so today we're diving into a really fascinating book, Noam Chomsky's Rogue States. And it asks this huge question, right? When you think about the whole game of world affairs, who actually gets to write the rules? And maybe even more importantly, who gets to enforce them, and why should we care? It turns out it matters a lot.
You've definitely heard this term before, right? Rogue state. It gets thrown around all the time, usually to describe a country that's breaking the rules or threatening world peace. But, and this is the key argument in the book, maybe we should be asking who's actually using that label, and what's their real reason for doing it?
Okay, let's get right to the heart of it, because this is the big idea. The book basically says that this whole rogue state concept, it's not as simple as it sounds. It's actually built on a massive double standard, and this double standard influences, well, pretty much everything in global politics.
So the book breaks this down in a really interesting way. It says there are two ways to think about the term rogue state. First, there's the propaganda version. That's the one we usually hear, and it's slapped on official enemies. But then, there's the literal meaning. Any state that just decides international rules don't apply to them. And here's the kicker. That second definition often fits the most powerful countries in the world perfectly.
And look, this isn't some conspiracy theory or hidden document. This idea was stated, pretty much out loud, by former U.S. Secretary of State Dean Acheson. I mean, listen to this quote. He's basically saying that when America's power and prestige are on the line, well, that's not really a legal issue. It's something else entirely.
So what you end up with is this tale of two rules. It's a classic double standard. On one hand, you have the rules for everyone else. You know, the UN Charter that says you can't just go around using force. But on the other hand, you have the rule for us, which is more like a guideline. We'll work with others if we can, but if we have to, we'll go it alone to protect our interests. Okay, so that's the theory. But how does this double standard actually work in the real world? Well, the book's analysis points to a few key takeaways. First up, the idea that force just takes over when the law gets inconvenient. A prime example given in the book is what happened with the US and Nicaragua. The World Court actually condemned the US for its unlawful use of force. So what happened? The US basically ignored the court, ramped up its actions, and then, to top it all off, vetoed a UN resolution that called on all countries to follow international law. It's a pretty clear sequence of events.
The second point is that accountability is, well, it's not exactly even. This gets to a really critical argument in the book. The criteria for being labeled a rogue state isn't really about how criminal your actions are. It's about whether or not you're defying the orders of the powerful. If you're an ally, you can often get away with similar, or even worse, stuff without ever getting that label.
And number three, military power and economic power are totally linked. The book argues that the justification for using military force, often by yourself, is explicitly tied to making sure you have uninhibited access, I'm quoting from the screen here, to key markets, energy supplies, and strategic resources. The two things, military might and economic gain, are presented as two sides of the same coin.
I know, this can all sound a little abstract. So to make it super clear, let's use a visual metaphor to really understand the argument.
Okay, just picture this. You're at a big game, any sport, but the referee isn't just the ref. They're also the best player on one of the teams.
So, in this game of global politics, the world's most powerful state is that referee player. International law, that's the rule book. But here's the thing. Fouls only get called on the other team, on anyone who challenges the ref. Because, as the book sees it, the goal isn't to play a fair game. It's to make sure your team wins.
So where does that leave us? What's the big takeaway from looking at the world this way? What does it actually change? Well, the book really pushes us to shift our perspective. It's asking us to go beyond just saying, hey, did someone break the rules? And instead to ask a much deeper question. Wait a minute, who got to write these rules in the first place? And who do these rules really benefit? And that really is the final thought to leave you with. Once you have this framework in your head, how does it change the way you see the next global crisis in the news? It gives you a new lens, right? One that makes you ask those harder questions about power, about fairness, and even about the words we use to talk about what's happening in the world.
For the full, long-form deep dive into this book and its ideas, follow the link in the description.
If you enjoy these explainers, please subscribe and comment with books or topics you'd like us to explore next.